Hey, hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Counterparts. My name is John Henry Soto. As always, George Batista is here, and we are very excited. We've been doing these shows. I'm going to talk a little bit at the beginning of this about what we're doing on these shows to give you a little bit of a understanding of what the hell are we doing, and um, and we're going to be talking about JFK today, which is a fascinating subject. I know nothing, but George has done some research, so both we're gonna all get educated together. So please join us. So I had realized that sometimes when you research a lot on a subject, both of us research a lot, which is good. I mean, I do some research, but when you get really extensive research done, it sometimes it kind of like doesn't create because then we both know a lot. You
Correct.
know what I mean? It's
Correct.
like, well, I think it's much, so like you're really good at the research part of it, and
But
I'm
that's why on this show though, I didn't go overboard on research and stuff. I mean, a few things here and
yeah,
there, but
yeah.
I think it's going to be more conversational. I think.
Yeah, it's because I want to hear what people have to say. I want to hear our thoughts about it,
Right.
whatever the subject is and stuff. So I think that's the way we're going to be doing it. Very quickly before we get started with the JFK conversation, I wanted to say that the Counterparts show, George and I, we've been doing. We're going to continue to do interviews. We're going to come back to interviews, and we ran into a lot going on, mainly for me, but there was a lot going on that I'm working on, and it was, when you're doing this show, it's not, we're here for an hour, but we have to do the research, we got to do the set up the show, I got to do the graphics stuff. They had to create the episode, then we got to put it up on all the social media platforms, and then we got to promote it, and then that takes a lot of time, and then you got to find the guests. That's actually what it is. You got to find the guests, you got to schedule the guests, and because the show is live, it makes it even more challenging because sometimes they're not available at that time. So we have to figure out a time that they will be available, or we'll have to go record them and then do an episode where it'll just run live, but we won't be actually live. Now, luckily, we haven't really run into that often. We've been fortunate that the guests have been able to come on live, which is pretty awesome. So we will continue to do that. I'm going to be going away next week, so I won't be here next week. We're going to have another episode here. We don't know exactly if George is going to be on or if we're going to have a best of, because we got some great episodes. But I'll be going away, so that's one of the things I'm also working on as well. And I'll be coming back for the following Tuesday. So that just so you know what's happening a little bit behind the scenes here at Counterparts is not that we're not doing guests anymore and that we're just kind of like having these conversations and some of them being silly, which we like being silly because that's what we do. But we also wanted to continue with the interviews because people love the interviews and we love actually learning so much from our guests and having these wonderful guests. So we are going to continue to do that. Somebody messaged a few people, well, two people, not a lot, not 1,000 people, but two people messaged me like, "Yo, what are you guys doing?" we're all
Really?
guests. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, well, I told them what's going on, and then I thought, maybe we should just talk a little bit about it today, And so
Maybe we
anyway,
should do a poll.
say it again.
I said maybe we should do a poll. I mean, just to say, hey, what do you guys think about guests versus us, what we're doing now, or a combination of the both?
Yeah, I mean that's a good idea. Maybe we should do something like that. Yeah, let's do a
Just to
poll.
kind of
If
hear
you're watching this now, let us know.
what people's thoughts
What
are.
your
Because
thoughts are. Um, I think also it's definitely not a lack of guests. We're so
no,
lucky
we can
that
book into next year easily.
we could book, we could have somebody booked for the next easily couple of years,
Yeah.
pretty easily, and we're very fortunate for that. So it's not that, it's just the fact that, I ran into a little bit of a scheduling thing and it was really hard to kind of make sure that we're doing a good a good job with the research and making sure that our guests are being serviced. If I don't answer an email, I have to answer the emails fairly quickly as soon as they come in. That's another challenge. If they say they're available at this time, but they need to know, and I'm in the middle of something and I don't answer for 2 hours, we'll lose our opportunity with that guest, and I don't want to do that. So I thought, just out of respect to the audience and out of respect to our guests, to George, to myself, to the family, our families, let's actually hold off a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll have some amazing guests, and we might even be doing 2 days a week, because George and I have talked about that, and we just haven't really pulled the trigger on that. But we are tempted to actually do that and have even double the fun. So that's it. And so let's do our sponsor, our wonderful sponsor. George, take it away when you have a momento.
Thank you, sir. So, as always, the Counterpart Show is brought to you by Wellness Resources, a family-owned and operated nutritional supplement company providing the highest quality, clinically formulated supplements since 1985. Find out why Wellness Resources supplements are the top choice of health-conscious individuals around the world. Check them out at myvitaminresource.com. If you enter the promo code Counterparts, you will get free shipping on your order, and that's not including their monthly specials. And this week they have their 25 to 30% off on their weight loss supplements and their leptin control pack, which are fantastic supplements. And by the way, they've come out with a few new supplements, which I'm going to be going over on my wellness show. So if anybody's interested in checking that out, that should be coming up this coming week. So again, check out Wellness Resources at myvitaminresource.com.
Cool. And of course, we're going to talk about this dude.
Oh, yeah.
JFK. And I have a lot of views on this because I'm into the mafia. I'm not in the mafia,
John,
but I'm into the mafia. So there's been so much information that's been put out.
Right.
By, it's hard to say the word reputable when you're talking about some of these characters, but they have no reason to lie about certain things,
right?
And some of the information apparently it's pretty out there. So there is that. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about JFK. And there were I think it was 13,000 files released, right? Whenever it was, not long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of showed. Now, there were some other stuff that was not released. So there's always something that they go back. They're like, you could take those over there, but no, not this one, not this one. This one goes in my pocket. This one goes in my pocket. So there is some more stuff that has to be released, but the 13,000 files were put out, and there was a lot of information in there. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald and the Ruby guy, those guys have a hell of a background. They are extremely connected to a lot of other things. They are not just, Lee wasn't just some crazed actor or just feeling like he wanted to do something. It was a lot more involved to that.
Yes, agreed. So yeah, I mean, if just a few things on JFK, just on the man himself. Okay. Obviously, he was the youngest elected U.S. president in history at the age of 43. Okay. He, and I think it's pretty easy to say that him being elected was a result of many people who helped him, including Joe Kennedy. Another gentleman who helped him was Frank Sinatra. So, and then of course we have our buddies in the good old mafia who wanted him for specific reasons. But he had an interesting life. One of the things that I didn't really know of, or maybe I knew kind of in the background passively, but that he was an author, an award-winning author.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he had written 2 books about World War II, and he actually won a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
For biography.
He was Very, very smart guy.
Yes, extremely smart, extremely smart. He actually he was a gentleman that also suffered from a lot of health problems.
Yeah, always in pain. He's like
He
bad
was
back.
always in pain. He had a condition called Addison's disease, which is a condition of the adrenal glands not working properly.
Wow.
Therefore, he didn't, because the adrenal glands secrete steroid hormones and a lot of different hormones, cortisol and all this. So because they weren't able to do that, he ended up with like lots of infections and lots of issues because of that. And that's why if you ever see him initially when he was younger, he was very, very skinny.
Yeah,
And then after he became president, he filled out because he was on steroids.
he's on steroids. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, just some interesting things about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that is qualified. I think he had his heart in the right place. I think he wanted to do, by his writing. When you read his, when you hear his speeches, and when you hear him actually just in a regular conversation, you get the idea that he's a guy that he's the son of very powerful people,
Right.
but he also understood that,
Yes.
and you have to be very self-aware to be able to be born in such a powerful family, with such a powerful father and grandfather, that that you have to rise above that and understand that you're still here for the people, that you still want to serve the people. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do when you have such powerful parents.
Exactly. But you could see where the mindset came from, because if you look at his grandfather and how successful his grandfather was, right? I think his grandfather at one point was mayor of a certain
Earth. He was
town.
mayor of Earth.
Yeah. And then obviously his Joe was, now it was interesting. Joe was an extremely smart businessman. I mean, he was a business genius, a lot of them called, because during the Prohibition era, obviously he positioned himself in a very good way. Now, now, there's a lot of backstory to that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, because Joe was involved in a lot of other stuff too. He was
Yeah.
involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But he he became powerful either way. I mean, he
Yeah, and I
was
think it
extremely
was also the time too. You know what I mean? Like
correct.
at the
Correct.
time, this is what's going on.
Right.
And you have these powerful, I don't know, you want to gangsters or powerful, organized crime leaders that are, extremely capable of making money and organizing. This is why, it's like, they say, what's the difference between the government and organized crime, right? One of them is organized. So organized crime, is called that, right? I mean, that was a name that was obviously given by the government, probably, but it was like when Lucky Luciano decided to gather the five families and put them together and say, okay, guys, let's try to not kill each other as much and let's try to make some money. He basically organized those families, and we're going back now during that era. So, you look at Prohibition became an opportunity for a lot of money to be made,
Mhm.
obviously through selling illegal, alcohol and the speakeasies and all that stuff. But at the same time, there were also other avenues to make money on through real estate, because a lot of people were during a prohibition in 1929, the crash.
Yep.
Uh, there was a lot of people that were losing their homes, so a lot of real estate people were able to purchase a lot of land, and a lot of
Correct.
wheeling and dealing happened back then. So you get guys like the Kennedys and the Rockefellers and the Carnegies. You get those guys, in that position, because they already had a substantial amount of money.
Right.
They can then really leverage that to triple it. And at one point, um, Carnegie had more money than the government. He had to lend the
Yeah.
government some money,
Right.
and we're going back a long time ago, obviously, but
Mhm.
his money was worth more than the gross income of the actual country. So when you take that and you understand then that that's so much money. That's like more than what Elon Musk is worth. I mean, that's
Right.
like
Right.
way more than Elon Musk in comparison,
Right.
with the
Sure.
dollar. So these guys were able to do that. And Joe Kennedy, you know, fell into that at the perfect time. He
Yes.
had already the flow. His father was a great businessman also,
Yeah.
and a leader, and did a
Right.
lot of other things. But he raised his son to be just same way. So
Correct.
Joe grew up to
Correct.
be the same way, and he raised his boys to be basically the same way. Unfortunately, when you get that deep, into the Cosa Nostra, it's gonna cost you at some point. Now,
Yeah.
go ahead. You have a
No. 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 Yeah. No. You're right.
point.
You're right. I mean, because again, it was interesting because when he was when he ran, when he started running in his political career and stuff like that, he had a lifestyle that was all over the place, right? His lifestyle. I mean, he was hanging out with all these guys, right? I mean, obviously he was hanging out with the entertainers. He was hanging out with the Sinatras of the world. He was hanging out with these guys who were getting him women left and right, who were getting him all this stuff. So he had that life, and he was, he
It's what
was,
we all strive for. I'm just kidding.
of course, yeah,
But yeah.
and got away with it,
Well, again, a different era. It's like
Yeah,
even
it
the,
is true.
even the media knew stuff that was going on, but the media was more. The media cared more about the actual actions of the politician to the actual policies and the government, and how things were actually being managed, than they
Yeah,
do now. Where now it's just a show.
it's
It's
just
it's just
right.
it's just
Correct.
show business now.
Correct. You're right.
Yeah.
And then, what ends up happening was obviously when he becomes elected, and all these folks out there who are, who campaigned for him, whether it's the mafia, whether it's Sinatra and his friends, or whoever it was, were like, okay, great, we get him in, we're in, right? We're in. That was kind of the mindset. And
Right.
this is where it actually changes, because he completely does a flip.
Yeah, because there was a tremendous amount of evidence, and there's books that you can read, and I've read a lot of books because like I said, I am a dork, and there's a book right now, from the Bonanno family that I'm halfway through, and he talks a little bit about that whole era and that whole time, and how there were favors done, and
Yes.
it's happening
Right.
today as well. It's like, you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. That's how it was. There was no money was exchanged. There was just, you can, if you're a politician, you can lobby for certain things. You can veto certain things that will help someone else who has an incentive, or
Right.
has some motive, financial motive, which is generally the thing. The big thing was Cuba.
Yes.
The big thing was Cuba. Cuba is 90 miles from here, from Florida. It's beautiful. I mean, the beaches are incredible. It's just an incredible place, and, Fidel came in, and they had to leave. Fidel kicked out the mafia. See, the mafia was in there already.
Was in there.
They
Yes.
had all that stuff set up, and they had everything. And then Fidel came in and said, get out. I think those were his exact words, if I remember correctly. He just walked in and said, get out. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you can speak English so well. So they had to get out, and then became the Cuban Missile Crisis, because then
Correct.
Russia got involved, and
Right.
now now you're behind the scenes now. Now
Right.
you're just, because in the media there's the Cuban Missile Crisis, there's Russia, and and Cuba and Fidel Castro, but there's other things going on. It's a chess game, and you're not
Mhm.
allowed to see the pieces, right?
True.
So what you have is somebody that they thought if they get him into office, he's going to be able to get us back into Cuba,
Right.
and
Correct.
get rid of, as they said in The Irishman, the Joe Pesci character. He goes, "Get us back into Cuba and get rid of that effing Castro." um, but these conversations definitely happened,
Yeah.
and but I don't think that it was public. I don't think this is my own sense on it, and let me know what you think of this. Right? I don't think that somebody sat down JFK and said, "Okay, listen, when you get into office, you gotta get rid of Castro and get us back into Cuba. Okay, we want to build some hotels down there. We want to do a lot of things down there." I don't think that that's what happened. I really don't think that happened. I think that it was implied by Joe Kennedy and others in that realm that were connected that, listen, get your son in, and then you control your son to do the things that we want to be done.
But you don't think that there was conversations between Joe and Jack?
I think it was sort of like,
Not direct, but
not,
let's say conversations saying, "Listen, we get you in, but there's some things you're going to have to do while you're in." You
I
know what
don't
I'm
know if,
saying?
I mean, it's
I mean,
really hard.
I don't know. It's hard
Yeah,
to say, but I'm
it's
just.
hard to say that if that occurred. I would
But
assume that Joe did have a conversation with him and said, "We can get you in," right? Because all they had to do was they did they cheated the votes
Yeah.
In Indiana.
Mhm.
Um, they had what they did was they had all these mob guys, like, go to the graveyards and get all the names,
Yeah, the names.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they just kept them, and so he slaughtered, and he won by a landslide and this is actually not a conspiracy.
Right.
This has been documented by way, more people than I can name, books and all that stuff. This is what happens, and it was easier to cheat than it is now. Like today, you can't really rig an election. Um, but back then it was much easier because it was just paper, and people had to count them, and it was just a little bit. It was different, um, so it was easier to cheat, But that's what happened. But I think he got in, and I think when he got in, he was like, "No, I'm going to be president."
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's the key where he fully embraced the actual
Yeah, he's
presidential
like, "I like
job.
it. I want to help."
And even at one point, and this is, at one point, because again, even he started to distance himself from a lot of these folks, from Sinatra and all these guys.
Yeah,
And at one point, because Sinatra was also close to a lot of the mafia guys, right? They talked to Joe to talk to Frank to ask him to tell Jack, hey, do some stuff. And there was supposedly a conversation in there.
yeah, yeah.
Did you, whatever. So he's trying to, get to his close friends, but he at that point was kind of like I was saying,
Yeah, I think he
distancing himself
bubbled
from them.
himself.
Yeah, he did. He bubbled himself where he didn't, and then of course appointing Bobby Kennedy, who is the biggest.
Well, that was what that
was
was
the nail in the coffin,
final.
if you
Yeah,
kind of
that was the
think
final
about it,
nail.
right?
That was it, because he was first of all, he was a kid,
Right.
and here he is now, the district attorney, and now his number one job is to put away the mafia.
Right. Exactly.
Where up to that point, people were still denying that there even was a mafia.
Correct.
People were still, even though there was a couple of, in the 50s, there was proof that there was by some people that came out of the Cosa Nostra and talked about it, but still, it was not so. It was still kind of in denial. There was still this denial thing, and now here he is pointing it out, saying that it exists, it is out there, and it is controlling the unions. It is controlling the loading docks. It is controlling the fitness industry. I'm just kidding. It's controlling the it's controlling a lot of different things, and it's not what they wanted to hear, especially when they went through all that work to get him in.
Right. And that's the whole thing. That's what pissed off the mafia. And the mafia not only at one point talked about killing Joe, okay, and he was saved.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about getting rid of Frank and his friends, and also they were saved.
Yeah.
Okay, but there was a lot of talk about wiping them all out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's really, a lot of these guys, they'll have these conversations, but the mafia doesn't really go out and say we got to kill, we got to kill. They don't do that. It's more of I mean, obviously it is business. The way they look at it. If somebody is encroaching on their financial gains, then that has to be stopped.
yeah,
and
but I mean there are actual conversations you can
there are
see that were
conversations
had that said, should we whack X, this person or that person?
There is conversations that have occurred like that.
Yeah.
But what my point is that back in those days, a lot of those conversations were being had.
Well,
Nobody could just do it. You can't go. Frank Sinatra was at the time already a legend, right? Frank Sinatra was a legend in the 60s, right?
Right.
Right. So this is all going into like mid 50s to the 60s, and to the end of the 60s. So he was already a legend. You can't just go whack Frank Sinatra, because Frank Sinatra, it is going to open up such a can of worms. Why did this happen? Who is he connected to? Who was he hanging out with? Who are his friends? It is going to just be incredible. So that's why he was saved. Same thing with Joe Kennedy. They didn't do that because, oh well, we're gonna save him because he seemed like a nice guy. No, they just know we cannot do that. We cannot do that. What we can do is cut the snake off at the head.
Right.
That's
well. It's calculation. It's really looking at the kind of the totality of saying, okay,
getting rid of Frank ain't gonna stop.
Correct.
The head from moving.
I mean, it's probably more anger at that point of nobody's doing anything for us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Nobody's getting through to this guy. They all said this and this and this. We should whack them all. There's those guys.
There's the anger, yeah. And there's a lot of videos, a lot of audio tapes of a lot of stuff like that, which I've actually heard a lot of that. Don Gotti's and a whole bunch of people that I've heard. And they're fascinating, but then they're so unreal that they can happen. You know what I mean? Like they're just so angry that they would just say it.
Yeah, true.
And then they have to sit down and be like, all right, let's think about this. What are the repercussions of this? Yeah. So the Kennedy thing, getting rid of Kennedy was a few things, a few people involved in that. Now, of course, there's the grassy knoll and second gunman and all that stuff. That really, because the scene was because the whole incident was so botched. The body, the recovering of the body, the handling of the body, the handling of the prisoner, Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot like the next day or whenever it was, all these things was so botched. It was clear that it was a hit because everything was so botched up. Because here you have a president who, by the way, was popular.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Was popular. Yes. It's not like the last couple of presidents that we had that were just not popular. People just don't like them. You know what I mean? They somehow win, but they're not popular, right? But no, this guy was really popular. People really liked this guy, So for them to do this, it had to be botched. It had to be a mess. It had to be chaotic, confusing, where nothing made sense, where the records were blocked, where you had people being interviewed that gave false reports, that gave false things, saying, I thought I saw somebody there. I thought I saw somebody there. I thought I saw somebody there. And then they have this one guy, Lee Harvey Oswald, and he ends up dying. So he ends up not even though he was trying to say it wasn't me, I was trying I was framed. He's trying to say whatever. They had to get rid of him because they had to make it. He had to take. He was already recruited that he was going to be the guy, and Jack was already recruited that he was going to be the guy to get rid of him, and then Jack was gonna get rid of him, at some point, right, when things were getting a little bit too heated. So this is how you protect anyone from getting caught.
Well, there's that whole there's the whole story of Oswald, right? The whole story of that he was a communist, right? His whole background. He was a communist. He tried to defect to Russia. He tried to defect to Cuba.
Yep.
And he married a Russian, brought her back here. He tried to organize people. He was, obviously Marine. He wasn't a great Marine. He wasn't actually considered even a great sharpshooter in the Marines. He was average
at all.
He was average at best. He wasn't a great person, but as far as just being an overall Marine. But what's interesting is that, when you look at it, I mean, there's the notion of, okay, the CIA was involved in it, right? Which,
right.
I mean, I don't know. But what I find interesting is a couple of things.
I don't think the CIA gets involved in things
well,
like
that. But there's a couple of things that I just find interesting, and there's many ways you can go with it, but right? The funny thing about it is that the CIA apparently, according to all the records, they had a tail on this guy for the last 3 years. They knew everywhere he went, Oswald, right? He went to Russia, he went to Cuba, and he met with this assassin from Russia, blah blah blah. Okay, but the one day where the president is driving through, and he has he obviously gets a job at the Texas Book Suppository. And
I'd say working there is such a pain in the ass.
I know. And the one day that he just happens to be there with a rifle, no, the CIA has no idea where he is. They just completely lose track.
Nobody knows where this guy is.
They just completely lose track of him. Okay, I mean, it's very interesting how all of a sudden nobody knows where this guy is. Meanwhile, they were tracking this guy apparently for the last 3 years. And another thing was that J. Edgar Hoover, after Kennedy was assassinated, and that was part of the files that came out where where one of the things that he said was, we need to pin it on Oswald. Yeah. Where he actually he actually says in his conversation, we need to convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin.
Right. And he was they had him blackmailed through most of his life, his career, because he liked to wear
dressing like a woman.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the thing is that also another thing is, like, Lee Harvey Oswald was also linked to another shooting assassination against before.
Well, he shot into a house and he missed the person.
Right. So I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't they have, if the CIA, the FBI, the CVS, whoever, wouldn't they be more on top of this and knowing, like, where is this guy? The president is going down the street with no cover on. This guy who tried to commit suicide in Russia. He was he was in the military. He wasn't a great sharpshooter, but they know he's out there somewhere. Wouldn't they want to know where the hell he is?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the day that the president happens to be driving by in an uncovered car, all of a sudden they have no clue where he is. So that's kind of funny to me, and it tells me one of two things as far as the CIA. And again, I'm just kind of looking both sides of it, because like Kennedy now, what's his name? Kennedy. Robert Kennedy. He's completely convinced the CIA was the one who actually.
Yeah, he said it, which I was like.
He actually said it.
Dude.
But so it's either that the CIA covered it up because they were completely embarrassed and they look terrible, because there's a perception thing in there, yeah. or that they were somewhat involved in it to begin with. You know what I mean? I
I
don't know.
think, the one thing that I know that people can agree is that this one man from this suppository shot, who was not a great sharpshooter, who, by the way, also had a lot of mental issues. Like,
Correct.
can he even organize and orchestrate such an attempt?
Yes.
Even can he even get his mental
He was.
ability
Yeah.
to even
Yeah.
do
He
it?
was.
He was not capable of even
No.
doing it. He was not mentally well. He never
No.
was.
Nope.
There's conversations with him that you can watch online prior to this,
Right.
and he's just not a well dude. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now you're telling me that he went and got this gun and was up there and loaded it up and got himself positioned, and nobody knew where he was, even though he's already been a threat, to the Kennedys and to anyone. And I think it is an embarrassment. But remember, the CIA. We talk about the CIA, we talk about the FBI, but these are just human beings, right? I mean,
Sure.
they're
Sure.
well trained in their field to do things. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they are human beings that will make mistakes. They'll be flawed. They'll some of them would even possibly do something that maybe is not okay if circumstances. If someone says we need to do this because it's going to save the country, in order to save the country, we need to kill this this person. You know what I mean? If you say it enough times to someone, you can convince them that this person being alive is going to hurt the. If you convince a person that that person is Hitler, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
convince him that that person right there is going to be exactly like Hitler. He's going to do what Hitler did. Look at his actions. Look what he's saying. He's just like Hitler, just like Hitler, just like Hitler. You keep saying it over and over again. You're going to get people saying he's just like Hitler. We got to get rid of him. We got to get rid of him. So the CIA, the FBI, whoever they're being controlled by, might be putting some kind of scenarios there that maybe are not true or whatever they are, but there definitely is a conspiracy of some sort. And I hate that word because whenever people roll their eyes, but there is something that doesn't make any sense when you look at someone just saying that Lee Harvey Oswald just did it, when you
But
know for
remember.
the fact that it did not occur.
But remember that right after the Warren Commission closed their investigation, it was picked up again later. Right. It was picked up again
After
by
the movie.
no, it was picked up in 1978 by the House Select Committee.
Oh,
Okay. And they went back into the investigation, and one of the things that they looked at was the recordings from that day, which came out of the motorcycles. Okay, because one of the motorcycles apparently left this thing on, and you can hear the gunshots in the background.
right.
So there was the House Select Committee did a whole hearing on it, and in 1978 did conclude that there was a conspiracy.
Right.
They did conclude that, and the only difference is that they were not willing to go all the way. They concluded that there was a conspiracy, that there was another shooter, but that the shooter missed. That was their conclusion. So there was some give in. They gave in to somewhat to it, but not.
Yeah, but you have to also understand the era. Who was controlling the country, really? I mean, who controls the trucking industry? Who controls the docks? If you know what I mean, who controls construction in New York and in Chicago and all the big cities? It's controlled by not that many people. I mean, back then, I mean, things are different now. I don't know what. I know that they're still there, but I know that it's not the big hold that they had back then. So
Right.
you can't come out and start pointing your fingers at these groups of people. You can't. So when you open up that investigation, and when they opened up that investigation and they started asking questions and researching, I'm sure that they have answers.
Of course,
I'm sure they know exactly, but they're not willing to go out there. Why? Because we have people that are extremely powerful and very, very, influential in what happens in your city. And if they decide to do even what they call a slowdown, they just do a slowdown. They just tell everyone slow down, and productivity goes down for that company. The thing is, it's not a walk off. It's not a strike, right? It's nothing. It's a slowdown. They will actually tell you we're slowing down. A couple of you guys take off a couple of work, and then the money when you hit people where in their pocket, or especially when you hit a country or a city, I should say. If you can't get the food trucks to the supermarkets, you're gonna have a problem.
Right.
You're gonna have a problem. Those trucks are extremely important and need to be respected. The drivers, and the unions as well, because they control so much. They control so much. The same thing with the shipping. The docks. A lot of stuff that comes in through there. So all that stuff back in those days was controlled by these individuals. So of course, if they opened up that investigation, they could do it now because look, they got away with it. Most of those guys are dead. Most of those guys that made those decisions back then are dead, and in their minds, they got away with it. They did it. They offed the president. They offed his brother. They got control of stuff. They didn't get control of Cuba because Fidel Castro was a little tougher than they thought, and they could not get Cuba. So they didn't really get what they wanted, but they got Atlantic City. Atlantic City was built with mob money.
It was built with, of course.
I mean, they built what did I say? Atlantic City?
Atlantic City.
Vegas.
And
Vegas. Atlantic City too, but Vegas really was a desert in the middle of nowhere,
yes,
where they just set up shop. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that to me is where you have to look when you look at something like the JFK situation and the Robert Kennedy. You have to look at who was in control and who had the most to lose by him remaining president and Robert Kennedy going after the mafia.
But I still think,
because if the mafia did not really control that much, George, think about it. If they didn't control that much, nobody would give a crap.
True.
Nobody would care.
True.
I mean, nobody would care.
I still think part of it is, and what continues to this day, well, it's more prevalent today, but there's perception involved. And like we talked about in the last couple of shows, why they suppress something, why they don't want something. Because, I mean, if you think about politics in general, and this still existed even back in the 60s and 50s, there's still perception, right? There's still, in politics, you're judged on how the public perceives you. Therefore, they're willing to put their vote behind you to put you in to accomplish a certain thing. If the public perceives
That's how
you
it was
as,
back then.
What?
That's how it was back then.
Well, now there's a lot more to it today. But what I'm saying is, but at its core, it's still around.
It's still around. It's still
around today. It's still around today because, I mean, think about it. If a politician, I mean, the whole point of politics is to lie, cheat, and steal your way in, based off of the perception that you give your constituents, so they can keep you in there.
Correct.
Right? I mean, that's what you do. But the point is that for them, in my opinion, is you don't want that getting out, because then it goes back to the same thing as before, even though nobody cares, but it's going to be that it's going to be that part of the society that says, you see, you cannot trust the government because now we know they assassinated JFK. We know that they didn't go to the moon. We know that they did this, they did that, and they did this. And you add fuel to that fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that they try to do their best to squash that, because then they look terrible.
True. But I mean, it doesn't seem like even today they're really trying to squash too much. A lot of these things have come out. There are even worse things. I mean, I there was down in Georgia. Probably can't even talk about this because of the last 2 years, but there was a situation that happened in Georgia a long time ago where the government was testing certain things in a certain portion of to see if those people got sick and died.
Correct.
This was found out, and there
Yes.
was an apology was sent out,
Yes.
and to this day, that area has been raised to not trust the government because they tried to poison us on purpose to
Right.
see what the effects were, and they thought, again, if we can really find out if this is actually a viable thing, we can then really protect ourselves. So you lose a couple of people, a few people die, you can save millions of people, right? So that was their intent, their goals. Same thing happened with the apology that Bill Clinton made. Remember the apology that he made about what occurred? It's hard to talk about that too, but if you go online, you can Bill Clinton's apology to the American people, and it's pretty shocking what they got caught doing, and they just said it, and they came out. They said, yeah, it was not okay. We apologize that it happened. There was a lot of things that were not taken into account, and when you have a society that you've basically poisoned, not just through a narrative of the media, but also through a narrative of what's good to eat and what's not good to eat, and you should watch on television and what you should consume. Think about it for a second, right? The government controls what you eat, right? They control the medicines. They control what you watch on television. They control what you see on the internet. They censor what they don't like, whatever the organizations are. Overall, whatever it is a full out control, and it's conditioning people to just go like this. Oh, there they go again. Oh, well. Let me get my Starbucks and I don't want to miss tonight's episode of blah, blah, blah. Because this is the mentality, because our educational system does not really teach civics. So we don't know the power that the individual has, to make a difference. They don't know what the Declaration. We just talked about that before we started the show, right? The Declaration of Independence is not taught in in school, because within that document states that if your government is acting up in a certain way, you have the right to fight and uprise. You have the right to protect your property. Why would you want to take everyone's gun away? Because you can't have an educated society with guns. You have to stop. So this JFK situation goes into the fact that they did it. They basically got away with it. All those involved are either dead or 100. There's nobody ever going to go to jail about that. And all we can do is do episodes and shows and talk about, oh, look at what they did. Somebody did this, and read all these books and stuff that basically states this is how it occurred,
Now I agree. Now, the only difference is, to me, and I think there's still a difference even at this juncture, is killing or assassinating the actual president of the United States on purpose is a little different than experimenting on people, or a president doing something in the White House or something like that. Okay, I think there's a level of degree in there. Okay, that's
I have a rebuttal. Go ahead.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Let me finish my other thought before it flows up, oozes out of my mind. The other thing is that today it's much easier to apologize and say something, because we as a society, to your point, are extremely distracted. Okay, whereas today that will come in the front page and be gone the next day, and by the end of the week nobody will care.
Right.
Whereas back then, it was a different society, was different. Okay, right. So I think more people would have cared back then if it had come out back then versus if it comes out now, because again, like you said, people are worried about their latte or whatever's on TV or Dancing with the Stars. If somebody assassinated JFK and it happens to be the CIA, well, too bad. Who cares? Let's move on. That type of thing.
Right. Yeah. So what my thought on that it's different about killing, or assassinating a president is the fact that there was way more to lose to not kill him than to kill him. There was way more, and you have professional people that kill for a living. You have people that do this. They know how to shoot, where to shoot. They know, you know, this is what they do for a living. I mean, if you look at and I know there's some stuff that people say is not 100% accurate, but like Frank Sheeran, who was a hitman for the mob, who wrote the book "I Heard You Paint Houses," which was a code for "I heard you kill people," right?
Right.
Well, in his book, he talks about the practicing that they did and how you
Yeah.
did it,
Yeah.
where you got rid of your guns, what kind of gun you should use,
Right.
for certain hits, certain things you would think you want to hit a silencer at some point. No, you don't. You want a loud gun because you want to scare everybody off so they don't look and they run away. You don't want silencers at certain moments. That kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh wow, okay. So you have people that have studied the science of killing people for business.
Right.
People that are and this has been going on, by the way, for a very, very, very long time,
Of course.
right? If an individual comes into some position of power where they can change the narrative to make people hopeful in some way, then they lose control. Those in power will lose control. If you have a society of thinkers, I think George Carlin had a great video, right, where he talked about they don't want a society of free thinkers. They
Right.
want controlled, obedient humans that will go to work and that are just smart enough to run the machines,
Right.
that are just smart enough to, and then pay their taxes, and that's all they're looking for. If you have an individual that's lifting people up, making them think, and also creating a powerful impact in some way, because people like that have an energy, right? They have a
Mhm.
certain aura about them, and when you hear them speaking, you feel something,
Right.
like when Martin Luther King speaks, man, you get emotional even today, right? When you
Right.
watch one of his long speeches, it's like,
Right.
man, that's amazing. JFK, uh, Gandhi, Malcolm X, and you can go back to Jesus Christ, right? I mean, Jesus was preaching. Jesus was out there challenging people and telling them, this is what you should do. If you follow this road, if you follow me, you will have, eternal life, right?
Right. Right.
Well, hold on, no, 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 we're not going to have that. You know what I mean? And this is the kind of thing that I know happens when you get an individual that has some type of power. It's the same thing that happens now with people. Social media has given. I think the way social media was framed, I think it sort of like backfired on some of the suppressives that put it out. I think they thought they were going to create this thing and it was going to help them make a lot more money to connect people. And yes, that is happening and stuff, but it also gives people the ability of those educated with the conscience to create platforms that we can go on and exchange ideas and elevate our awareness.
Right.
That they
Right.
didn't expect that. They thought they would
Right.
control everything of it, which is
Right.
why they control a lot of the internet, all the regulations that came in through Obama's presidency, and
Right.
even it started through Clinton and through Obama. That all that stuff that occurred for the regulations were because they were losing control.
Right.
They were losing
Right.
control. So this is part of a much bigger thing, the whole JFK thing. And I think it's funny because whenever we talk about any of these things, we always kind of end up talking about almost the same kind of thing.
Well, it all, because it all goes back to that.
Yeah.
It all goes back. I mean, you again look at what we went through in the last 3 years. It's the same thing. And the funny thing, you're talking about social media. And actually, I was listening to somebody's podcast today on that, and they were talking about exactly that, what social media was really designed for, and that type of thing. And the funny thing is now the issue with the control piece is now more than ever before, they are losing control because now there are so many other avenues. Independent news now is becoming a huge thing.
Yeah.
There's such a segment of society now that doesn't even go to mainstream
Yeah.
news
Like
anymore.
the man on the street, like a guy with a cell phone. Like,
Right. And mainstream news is tanking. It's an archaic thing. It's going
yeah.
it's literally dying
It's a
because
show because people are starting to be aware of someone saying three men, murdered a young girl today and
right.
fled. They got caught. He goes, so what's the weather tomorrow?
Yeah, right.
That
Exactly.
that one
Yes.
hour of insanity, insanity. Oh, the weather, oh, the sports. It should tell people that this is an insane planet and this is an insane system that
Right.
they've been feeding you. And what's happening is, like, you're right. Those independent news organizations, the guy on the street, the girl on the street that's literally just videoing what's happening, what's
Yep.
actually happening, and then
Yes.
quickly uploading it to a platform that cannot be controlled.
Right.
All these things are where they're losing the battle.
Right.
And it wouldn't surprise me if, like, if a lot of people start actually getting arrested, big names that we know, for obstructing some of the actual truth and for lying under oath and for doing
Yeah.
all the things that have already been proven. We've already seen it. It's already been proven. If you go on to, first of all, I'm on Telegram and Telegram, the things that are on there are like unbelievable facts that you're actually looking at. They're not videos that are doctored. They're actual
Mhm.
actual videos. They're actual interviews with
Yeah.
real people that you can actually look up and are on Wikipedia, and that they have all this amazing back. I'm not defending any one side. I think they're
Right.
both in cahoots in whatever they're doing. I'm not defending that. I'm saying that this is was what I'm looking at, that gives me, like, wow, that makes sense because of this.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
the stuff that you see on the news does not make sense.
Of course not.
It doesn't make sense. It's all out of context. It doesn't. It's they're putting a
It's
show
like,
on. You
yeah,
know.
no, and honestly, it doesn't matter because it doesn't have to make sense. Okay, it really doesn't have to make sense. It just has to feed you this, and you say, oh, okay,
And
most
sell
because
product.
people to because right because people today are most people today who are not on the independent side who are still watching that stuff are
Yeah.
they're not going deep in.
Who are these
They,
people?
yeah, they're not going deep into that. I mean,
Yeah.
I listen, I love my parents, I love my mom, okay, but my mom watches that stuff, and my mom thinks that everything they say is true. I'm not going to get into an argument with my mom because I love my mom, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that. But just by the things my mother says, and I'm like, Mom, really? you know, it's
Yeah.
it's
It's the same kind of conversations that I have with some people as well, and I don't even have them anymore because I'm sort of made peace with the fact that I just have to prosper, flourish and prosper as an
yeah, you
individual.
can't convince anybody of anything.
Yeah,
It's
and I'm just going to you know um, continue to flourish and prosper, and then help those that want to be helped.
right,
Right?
exactly,
Because there are
exactly.
people that just I think victimhood is almost like a badge of honor for some people.
Mhm,
They enjoy
mhm,
it. It's
mhm.
sort of like, man, I'm a victim. Yeah,
Right, right,
look what
right.
they did to me. And I can't live like that. I can't live like that. And I also don't respect, you know, not openly, but privately, I don't respect someone that does live in a victim state of mind, because I
Right.
think and I'm not saying across the boards, because there are people that have been dealt a really bad hand in life,
Sure.
and I
Sure.
have empathy for them, and I understand that. And there are people that have had much worse situations. You and I were extremely lucky that we had the families that we had, that protected us from the insanity that was happening around us in
Right.
that area, that we were able to find music early in our lives. So we have we were dealt, A's, right? And there are people that were not dealt those hands. So I have empathy for that, but if you're an individual and you're a capable person and you actually you work, and you're still trying to play the victim, I think that that's a very dangerous thing. And the media makes it okay to be a
Yes.
victim. That is the
Yes.
narrative that's being put out there. It is okay to be tired and weak, and to just take a, what do they call it? When you have to take a rest day or something,
Okay.
or
Take a sabbatical or whatever.
yeah, like and there's nothing wrong with like chilling out and
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
on vacation and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But they make it seem like we're coal miners or something.
Right.
I
No,
sit in
you're
front of a computer and I edit for work and I do videos for work, and that's my job is what I mean. And I get stressed. Don't get
yeah,
me wrong.
sure.
I get stressed.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, when I think about my grandma sitting around in a factory for 20 years, putting little zippers together on a machine, when I think about my grandpa, whose like third or fourth career was folding towels and sheets in a hotel and for 20 years in Manhattan, and I think about my situation, I'm like, I'm not a victim. I'm
Right.
actually blessed. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
perspective is also a big thing.
Exactly. So, John, can you solve the JFK assassination, please, for all of us,
Of
for
course, of
everyone?
course, of course. I'm sorry it's taken so long, everyone. I thank you for hanging tight. All right, so here it is. I have it in my notes here. And it's basically what we kind of talked about already. So JFK became president. They wanted him to become president because they wanted to get into Cuba. That's known. That's pretty well known, actually. Now, the CIA being involved was not involved. The CIA knows about things, but the CIA doesn't get involved in things. That's they can't get involved in everything. You know what I mean? They have a lot going on. Remember, it's the Central Intelligence Agency, right? So they have to go, not the intelligence of just what's happening here. They have the intelligence of what's happening in the whole world, everywhere. That's a major thing. So they can't get involved with like everything for everything. Did they know about stuff that's going on? Absolutely. Absolutely, there are people that know. Do all of them know? No. It's not a memo. It wasn't posted up on their board. It's not on the kitchenette refrigerator. It's not there. They don't. A lot of some. I would say probably 99% of them don't know. But there are individuals that I'm sure that they know. He got. They needed to get him to be president. He was not really winning.
Right.
People don't remember that he was not winning in a lot of the polls.
Correct.
What's his face? Nixon, who turned out to be fantastic. Um, he was actually winning,
Yeah,
and
he won by this much. Actually, it was a very
yeah,
close race.
very, very close. So, and the reason was, one of the major things was that they put him on television, and I'm going to give the full ending here, but one of the major things is that they 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 put him on television knowing that JFK was a very good looking dude,
Hmm.
had great hair, right? Great smile, and the cheekbones, everything was just like great for television. So the
Right.
first televised debate was that, and here you had Nixon on television next to JFK, right? The freaking
Right.
stud. So and he was sweating.
Right.
He was sweating, and it
Yes.
just and the next day the polls were evening out. They still weren't there, but they were evening out. And then you had, okay, well, we have to get him in. We have to get him in. You understand? When someone above says we have to get him in, make it happen, those guys, you better believe they got to figure out what to do. And
Right.
they had to figure it out. And what they did was they doctored all the stuff. They got all these guys to go out and get the names down. Guys were doing it like hundreds. They were going in 100 times voting. It was like
Mhm.
weekly. Just keep it. It was like ridiculous how many people were just going in and back of the line and back of the line and back of the line. And the people that were checking them in couldn't say anything.
Right.
They couldn't say anything because they were also, here's a couple $100, just don't say anything. You know what I mean? Um, and so he ends up winning, and he ends up deciding that he wants to actually do good, and he
Yeah.
wants to take out the mob, and he wants to go to the moon, and he wants to do all these things, and he puts his baby brother, basically sent his baby brother to, he basically executed his baby brother, the poor guy, But he gave him an opportunity of a lifetime to be attorney general, which is not so. it's it's sort of like it's sort of like me becoming president and then putting my son as attorney general. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
like I have a kind heart. I want to try to help. My son doesn't know anything. He's only 6, but he probably would be a awesome attorney general. But so it's just it was not a good thing. So they put him in, and this is where the mafia had their meetings, and this is where they plotted. They knew he was going to be in Dallas. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of evidence to know that the thing in Dallas was very well known that was happening within that world, and that's been documented also. And the mafia killed JFK because they wanted to get control of Cuba. There's a lot of money in Cuba. I'm talking about $1 billion in Cuba that they knew that was there. They had all this union money waiting to invest in Cuba, and they did him out. They did him in, and that's what happened. The mafia. It was a hit. It was a hit, and it was orchestrated not only as a hit, but it was followed through on everything else that had to happen. Because remember, you can't just kill the president and then just walk away.
Right.
You gotta cover your bases. You gotta blame somebody, and then you gotta kill that person, so that person doesn't start falling apart under oath or giving more information than they know. And they knew that Lee Harvey Oswald knew a lot more than what people know.
Well, Lee Harvey Oswald also had family that worked for
Correct.
the mafia, okay,
Correct.
including Carlos Marcello, who was well connected, and then of course he ends up killing Jack Ruby ends up killing Oswald. Jack Ruby was one of the most connected guys,
exactly, as well. So the idea that if anyone to tell me that it wasn't is ridiculous. You need to stop. We solved it here tonight. Unfortunately for JFK, who I think had a good heart, I think he wanted to do well, and his brother I knew wanted to do well. Unfortunately, when you cut into profits that heavy, it doesn't matter who you are. And it's like Joe Pesci said in The Irishman to Frank Sheeran. He said about Jimmy Hoffa. They said, he says to Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, the guys upstairs, are not happy with Jimmy Hoffa, and then Frank is like, he's like, yeah, but Jimmy's pretty up there too, and he's like, not like this. And then he goes, Frank, if they can whack a president, they can whack a president of a union. And they got rid of Hoffa as well, and for the same reasons.
Yeah.
For the same reasons, he wanted his union back, and he had a lot of charisma, a lot of control, and there you have it, folks. Another conspiracy solved here on Counterparts. We just keep knocking them out.
Solve the mysteries.
Mafia killed JFK. We never went to the moon. That one kills me. I had a friend, David Guzon messaged me. He goes, I watched your show. He goes, I watched it. I enjoyed it. And I was very frustrated through all of it. And I was like, yeah, we aim to please. That's
it.
That's our brand. Oh, Lord. That was fun. Anyway, so we will have more information in the next few days on what the show is coming up for next week. But then I will be back the following week. And the following week, we'll be covering, just so everybody could be in suspense for it. It says Mafia. And then the one after that is Sopranos. So you know what? Let's do a whole Mafia. I'm very, very well versed in that.
I know you're very well versed in
that. I've read a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of YouTube. I'm part of like groups about it just because I'm fascinated with the
and you're still alive.
Exactly. I'm fascinated with the idea that you can use crime and justify it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like justify it. Like they're all criminals. They all should be in jail, but yet they somehow justify murder. They justify stealing, protection, all that stuff. And it's just fascinating to me. It's fascinating. So I do have a film also that I'm currently still editing. It's called Listen, Charlie. And it is actually does have a mafia theme in it. So
Oh, nice.
I'll be
And
wrapping
before we
that
go, I just want to congratulate John on his last film also being in the film festivals, these latest film festivals that he's in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, it was in the Manhattan Film Festival, which was big. I was excited. Well, they're both big actually, and the Tennessee International Independent Film Festival here in Tennessee. So I'll be actually going to that one, and I'm working on maybe going to the one in New York. I'm seeing if I can swing a flight, a cheap flight to go there. I'll go on Spirit and sit on the wing.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to push.
Yeah. Be like, harder, Puerto Rican, harder. You want to fly for $50? Harder. Yeah, so I'll get there, and that should be a lot of fun. So, but thank you. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you always. Please visit our website, counterpartsshow.com. You can see a lot of our episodes there, past episodes, and some other fun stuff. George's show is on there as well that you can watch, Wellness Talk, and he's got some great information there if you're interested in like living well, healthy, and happy. Check that out. And that is all. So we will see you all again. I won't see you next week, but George might be. We'll see what happens. We'll announce that, but then we'll be back in 2 weeks for sure. So thank you, everybody. And as always, oh, George, you have something else?
No, I'm just saying.
Okay. And as always,
peace.